Welcome to the Strong Talk Podcast. I'm Kalle Beck, joined by today's guest, middleweight pro strongwoman Britany Diamond. Been meaning to do this episode for a while. I don't know why. It's just one of those that kind of just kept slipping my mind to book, but happy to finally have you on, Britany. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks, Kalle. I'm good.
Yeah. So there's been a lot going on. You know, you just competed at the Arnold Pro, he's world's strongest woman. There's so much going on, but I want to start back at the beginning and just go through how you got involved in sports that led its way to strength sports and strong woman.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I always share my story kind of often because people think, to start strongman, you had to have some type of experience, but I went into it pretty blind. I definitely had an athletic background my entire life. I was a long distance runner. And then I actually went to college for a sport that was completely foreign to me. I went for rowing because simply for the fact that I was able to get more scholarship money rowing than track. So that was kind of a hard switch because I was definitely leaving, like running was my passion, but I had a couple injuries and I figured rowing, to leave school debt free would be worth it. So I did that. And my favorite part of rowing was we had a strength and conditioning coach we met with in our fall season. So we actually had 2 seasons for rowing. So 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 a.m. So we were lifting actually after rowing and running. So I was never really rested, but I was kind of just instantly hooked. I liked that I could measure my progress, and it was something that I was doing completely alone. When I'm rowing with others in the boat, I had to rely on them, and what I lifted was 100% on me. And then my junior year of college, it was the summer, and I was working at a gym, and we were actually putting on an event similar to CrossFit, and I was just kind of doing some social media blasts and getting it out there. And that's when I stumbled upon the show. It was called Boston's Strongest. And I was like, oh, what's that? I just kind of clicked on it. And I was like, oh, it's at this gym called TPS, Total Performance Sports. That's like 2 miles away from where I live. How have I never heard of this? So I clicked on it. And then I actually went to the gym that night and asked the person at the front desk more info on it. And I was like, is there a class I could do? And they're like, yeah, there's a novice. That's for someone that, doesn't have any experience. So it was in, I think, like a month. And I was like, all right, cool. So I looked at the event. I knew what a deadlift was, wasn't really sure what an axle was. And then there was something called a yoke. I had no idea what that was. Something, Atlas stones. And the other event was like a prowler push. So a lot of the events I just kind of Googled and was like, all right, I signed up. And I had sent an email to Eric Dawson, who was the head coach there. And I was like, hey, I'm a trainer too. How much is it for a session? And he emailed me back. And, I was a poor college student. So I said, oh, my God, thank you so much. I think I'm just going to wing it. If I like it, maybe, I can work with you one-on-one after, which actually he's my coach to this day. So it was kind of funny. So I just, I got a couple of Facebook messages from a few women, and they offered to send me some DVDs. They were part of this group called New England Women of Strength. And I was actually it was funny because I admitted this to them after. I was kind of annoyed. I was like, why are they Facebook messaging me, like wanting to send me so many things? Like, I don't care. I'm just gonna do it. And it turns out they were actually trying to grow the sport. And they were kind of unsure if I did it and didn't like it. They were just kind of scared because usually people at least practice like once or twice, but no, I just went into it totally blind. And there was 5 women in my class, and I actually ended up winning, which was really funny because I remember at the beginning of the contest, people were like, I did not wear like what I should have. I was wearing like a polyester tank top that was so slippery, but like I had no idea. I was just winging it, and I had so much fun. And I kind of just instantly knew at that contest, like once I graduated, I was going to commit 100% to this. I feel like my passion I just fell in love. It was like the feeling I had on the track when I was a young girl. It was I just like, really fell in love. So pretty much that's what happened.
Yeah. And what year was this? Just to keep
my
the
first
timeline
novice
going.
show. Yeah, that was in 2013, and then 2014 I graduated, and that's when I really started actually training.
Sure.
And I would say from then I've been competing, pretty much at least a couple times a year.
Yeah, to say the least. But yeah, it was before. I feel like 2013 is when like the strong woman side really, like before it almost didn't. Not to say it didn't exist, but comparatively, it didn't. Like it was not even the same thing. It was, not every show would even have a women's division, so that's why, the people with New England Women of Strength, they message, because anytime there's like a new girl that would even want to sign up for a contest, that would be exciting for someone back then, I imagine, just because.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they said after. They were like, sorry for pestering you. We just didn't want, they were like, to put it bluntly, they were like, we actually admire your, well, they said balls. I guess I can say that, right?
Sure.
So, yeah. So it was cool. There was actually a lot of women. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I have pictures, and I would say there was probably about like close to 25, 30 girls that day.
Yeah, that's definitely big, because, I remember, just some of my first nationals, there's probably, maybe 3 women in a class, and now it's equal, if not more on the women's side. So it's just a whole different time. It's grown so much, and, I'm sure you've seen that as well. And we'll get into that.
Yeah, I actually met you at my first nationals that October 2014.
Yeah, so you graduate, and you get done with school 2014. You're like, okay, I'm gonna, you're not rowing anymore. You start to compete a little bit more seriously, I assume, do your first open contest and qualify for nationals. So how was that experience? Because obviously the weights are a lot different at nationals compared to a local show, usually, and there's a lot more people. So what was your thought process, being still new into the sport? Where was your mind at going into your first nationals in Reno in 2014?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I actually really like to talk about. And I'm glad I had this experience, because it makes me a better coach. Because point blank, when I qualified for nationals that year, it was by default. It was because the other women in my class had dropped out or got sick or for whatever reason couldn't show up. So I won by default. So I really did not feel like I deserved to be there. And someone just said, you know what, whatever, just go. It can be a good experience. And my goal, I'm not kidding, was literally not to come in dead last. And to this moment, I still am so proud of myself, because if it wasn't for that moment, like just taking a risk and going to nationals when I knew I wasn't 100% ready, I actually ended up placing in the top 3 for my weight class, because like it is now, there's middleweight, and then it's subdivided from 140 to 160, and then 160 to 180. So I placed in the 160 category, which is funny because that's actually what I used to naturally weigh. I weighed about 155. These days I'm closer to 180. So it's kind of funny how that worked out. But yeah, I went, and as soon as I had qualified for the Arnold, I kind of was like, you know what, I'm just going to do what I did for nationals, and I have more time to train, because at that point, that was October. I'd really only been training for like nationals for, I think like 5 weeks or so. And there were so many events. I'll never forget, there was a keg overhead press.
It was part of a medley, right? I could
not do it. Yeah, I zeroed it that day. And like, I knew I might have zeroed it. I passed out on the car deadlift, as you know, because that's how we became friends. And yeah, I was total novice, but I had so much fun, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I was still placed top 3 and enough to qualify for national. I mean, for the Arnold, sorry. But yeah, just to clarify, I remember, the car deadlift. It was like the first year that they had, because like for whatever reason, like for the past like 5 years in a row, they had a car deadlift at nationals. They had a car deadlift. It worked out really well for me a couple times, but. That this was, but the women would have like a frame, and there was always talk like, just give us a smaller car or something, like it needs to look the same. And I think this is the case with, whether the lighter weight class or, the women's division or something. You shouldn't do completely different events, but you can scale them down, and so it still appears to be the same thing. And they did that in 2014. So, like all the strong women were just, then probably none of them have deadlifted a car at this point because it wasn't very common to see in shows. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, you literally like got done. I think you blacked out while pulling. I'm gonna say like.
Yeah.
Just,
So what happened? And now I obviously know you don't try anything new on contest day. That was a very, novice beginner mistake that I had made. And someone was like, "Oh, you should try ammonia." And I had never tried it. And
great idea.
Now I do it, but the first time you take smelling salts, it's a total shock. And I remember like shaking and like I didn't even know how I strapped it. And I honestly didn't know I got any reps. So that was pretty scary. I definitely didn't touch ammonia for another year or so.
Yeah, and you literally like were about to fall down, and I kind of guided you down. It was funny. I think there's still like a video that can be made. It's funny in hindsight.
Yeah, and then I remember the next day I came up to you and I was like, "So hey, thanks for catching me."
But yeah, you definitely don't want to try anything new at contest day. Everyone, I just talked to a client yesterday. I'm just like, hey, if you're looking tired and someone's like, oh, I have this great pre-workout, try this. Oh, you should try these straps instead. Like you can go back and figure that out in the next week or two, but not on that day. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how was that first experience? It's probably a little different for you because been involved in athletics your whole life, so you're used to that. Being around other people with, similar interests and drive. But how was that first experience just, meeting people from, all over the country at your first nationals?
It was amazing. To this day, nationals in 2014 in Reno is by far one of my favorite contests because it just kind of showed me why I love the sport so much. And I have friends not even all over the country, all over the world now because of it. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was awesome. Like I noticed in the beginning of the contest, my direct competitors, we might not talk or whatever, but then towards the end, everyone really lightened up. And I thought it was cool because obviously at the end of the day, especially at the level I am now, I'm obviously very competitive. Like I want to win, but at the same time, we sort of directly support each other, which is awesome because not a lot of other sports do that. So that was definitely my overall experience with it.
Yeah, I think that comes just from the same thing, like why you were messaged when you signed up for the contest is, we all kind of get what goes into it, and want to see other people do it. So there's even people you don't necessarily get along with the most or anything. You go, okay, I respect what you're doing, like I get it.
Yeah, like anything in life, people at work, at contests,
sure.
etc. It's just
Yeah, you have that. Then you go to the Arnold. If I remember right, did you barely miss out on day 2, or was that the next year? I don't know.
Yeah. So I had 2 years in a row that I barely missed out on day 2, and it was always something very dumb. Which now that I coach, I feel like I would never make these mistakes. But I was so kind of like hyped up and excited to lift and like be fast and move stuff that I would always I was the person that my competitors probably knew they could get me, like, oh, Britany Diamond's going to do something like not put a keg completely on the map or do something. So it came down to like it does that every contest, it came down to the details. Like I think I always had the strength to have made it to day 1, even my first and second year, but I always did something, not technically correct or didn't follow the rules exactly. So it was kind of both years that I was like, I just missed day 1. Day 2, excuse me.
Yeah, it's, at that level, everyone's strong. It's just kind of who executes. And
exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and I saw your, obviously some people are just stronger than others. But really, I feel there's a bunch of people that could win. Most of these contests are, somewhat even, and the winner could be between the top 5 at most any high level contest.
Yeah, I usually say it's whoever doesn't make any mistakes.
Sure. Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, and it's hard to do it in that day, that time. It's easy. In training, you got to do it again. Like, oh, I kind of messed up that clean. I'm going to start over, and you don't get that, so it's always tough. And
exactly.
I saw, you put up a post, giving some advice, like event by event for some of your clients, because obviously you do online coaching, and all that now, and you're very detailed in the little things, and that's what I always try to express as well, is just, pay attention. Like, you're not getting any stronger on contest day. You just have to, not, like you said, not make mistakes. So and I think that's something that I see missing when people hire a coach or something. Is it's, in my opinion, it's the value is not like the program they write. It's just reiterating all those things that like someone like you or I have learned from mistakes usually, to
Yeah,
how to
and
not
that
to
was
make them.
something. Yeah, the details is something. I had the privilege of working with Eric Dawson in person, and so he would always share, little tips and tricks, I guess you would call them, about something as simple as, place the implement this way so you can knock off half a second or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that with online coaching, it's more of, you have to make sure you really get those details across and make sure they understand and kind of learn like how the person is going to learn. So sometimes I'll do a phone call, but sometimes I want to have it written out so they can really,
Sure.
Get the play-by-play. I think in strongman too, people joke like, oh, it's not that technical. You can hitch a deadlift.
It's ridiculous.
You can do this. Yes and no. At the same time, I often say, like, I think yoke is one of the most technical events, because if you look at it, if it's a 60-foot run, the top 10 times might be within a split second of each other. So it's
Sure.
really, really vital that, you look at those details and try and work on how can it be a second faster, maybe a split stance, just looking at all those different factors that go into it.
Yeah, on a yoke, especially a nationals level contest, is you can lose 10, maybe even 15 points by just be half a second slower. And that's the difference between winning and placing 8 maybe overall at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really understand until they get to a national. At a local show, there might only be like 7 people in a class, but when you get to a class with 20, 30, 40 people,
Mm-hmm.
things change.
Yeah, and I know at local shows I could kind of have a poor event and still just make it up, because I know these other 3, I'm just that much, like, maybe let's say you win like a overhead and a deadlift, and then like stones at the end, more of the static, but place mid pack on the yoke, it's not as important. But if that same mid pack makes you get 25th, it's going to definitely take you out of contention. It really highlights your weaknesses when you're competing against that many people. So I think right around that time you start, going, trying to, obviously, like, that's right around when pro cards were announced for women, and that's obviously a goal. And I think you're pursuing it, and you got a back injury. That was your first major injury in strongman. So how was it, dealing with that? And because it looks like you've pretty much rehabbed it completely. So how was that process like, coming back from an injury and still sticking to your goals?
Definitely. So in 2016, that was a really tough year for me, but 2017 ended up being the best year of my life in terms of my athletic career. So in 2016, I missed again day 2 by like half a point. It was because I actually won the last event, but because of a stupid mistake, like not putting the implement fully on the line, I ended up going from like first place, and they placed me like 8th. So that missed again. I got 5th place overall into the top 4. So that really was pretty heartbreaking. It flat out just sucked. And I'm so glad I didn't quit, because, that's the year women got their pro cards. I did a show pretty much right away, I think like 6 weeks later, because I figured, like, I'm already in shape. There's another heavy deadlift. And during the training process, I had pulled my hamstring again, which was something that happened a couple of years ago when I was a sprinter. So I kind of just stopped deadlifting and was going to wait until that day. And then, of course, that day it was the Kumite, and it was a Platinum Plus. So I won, but it was a 2-day event, and on day 1, I, during the deadlift, like, did something to my back that, as anyone who's had back pain can relate to, where it's the kind of back that where it goes out, you really can't walk or do anything, and not to be too graphic, but you can't even go to the bathroom because your pelvic area, everything is such in spasm. So that was pretty intense. Looking back, you might want to call it young and dumb. I called it determined at the time. Now I call it stupid.
I had plenty of those.
Went fourth. I went fourth and competed in day 2 with muscle relaxers and caffeine. I remember I had so much adrenaline and I was in so much pain that I actually didn't warm up for any event because I knew that would risk hurting myself even more. So after I did the stone, I crawled away and I couldn't get up for a couple of hours. I went on a plane wearing my belt and I was pretty much out of commission. I actually used sick time at work for 2 weeks. I really couldn't do anything. I ended up having 3 herniated discs and 2 bulging, which isn't the problem because most people, especially lifters, have their L3 and L4 herniated and might not even know. It's just that when it's hitting that nerve, it sends a message to your brain that you're pretty much out of commission.
Yeah, I think
so. That was the thing that sucked the most too is a week later they announced that if you won a Platinum Plus, you'd get a pro card from there on. So I was like, all right, I just basically killed myself and I still don't have a pro card.
Even though you just did the thing, if it was 2 weeks, if they made the announcement 2 weeks before or whatever, you had already done that. Yeah, that does suck.
So I was pretty pissed.
Yeah, I think there's understandably. I think there's a couple important things to touch on. You say determined, and I've definitely been there. I've definitely, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to that, where it seems like there's a time where you have to do this next contest because I can't wait, right? Even though you're it's probably going to set you back even further, but you're thinking so in the moment that you can't wait for the next one. And something I've learned is that there always is another one, and you're it's unlikely that you're just going to all of a sudden just not be good anymore if you take a little break. You can always get better. And long term, you're probably better off just skipping, 1 Nationals, 1 Arnold, 1 Platinum Plus, if you're starting to get those kind of symptoms. But it's hard to say that though, because that same kind of mindset is why you just decide to go to Nationals in the Arnold, even if you're not prepared, and then it works out well. So it's a really fine line.
Yeah, exactly. I think when you're more of a novice, you can do more contests and stuff, but as you progress as an athlete, obviously progress does not happen as quickly. In your body, you need more frequent deloads, kind of can't handle the amount of volume you could in your first year or 2 of lifting. So I was actually, that was kind of a wake-up call. I think, how old was I? 23 or 24 when that happened. And that's when I decided it actually was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it propelled me to, that's when I actually started online coaching, because I was like, I miss coaching people in person, but I have a regular job right now. I know one day I will own a gym and be able to coach people in person again, but how can I use my injury to help benefit other people? So I started blogging a little bit and talking more about it, and that's kind of, it was a blessing in disguise, because it really crushed me that happened, but I learned something called PRI, which is the Pelvic Restoration Institute, just learning about different breathing exercises, and I was even more detail oriented when it came to warming up and things like that. But my back still, trust me, it still always hurts, especially some days. So I've really learned when to dial it back and kind of how to balance things. So oftentimes I might spend more time actually rehabbing than training. So
yeah, because you're already so strong, so I really feel at some point it's just who can show up healthy enough, Yeah,
exactly. Because I always tell that to people too. I'm like, when you're going into a big contest, if you ask anyone, I'm sure something hurts. Someone has a bicep that's messed up. Someone has a hamstring. Probably everyone has their back. Someone has a rotator cuff. Everyone has something. It's just, and I think that goes back to kind of just taking a look and seeing is this smart if I do this? Yes or no? Like, what will the rehab process be like? And you just kind of have to make a pro and con list as to whether you do something when injured.
Yeah, absolutely. So it got you into coaching, and I think that's, we've talked about that a lot, privately in the past on where you go. So I get that question a lot from people, and they're like, they've competed, they want, similar conversations that we've had. They've competed, they want to do more. Obviously travel expenses, compete at a high level, show up. They ask about sponsors, etc. But they're not really sure how. So what's your advice for someone who, like, you kind of want to more, not that they want to make a buck, but you want to, it's because you're passionate about something and you want to just become more part of the industry. How was that process like for you, and what's the advice you have for others that want to take a similar path?
Yeah, as far as advice, I would say just being authentic, because I know there's so many people that ask, like, oh, I want to get sponsored. And obviously I did too at one point, but it just kind of happened in time. And to this day, people don't realize, like, I still have to pay for some of my own expenses no matter what. So It just kind of comes down to, like, social media, one of the best things about it is you can use it to project your voice in a very positive way in your sport on different issues and how you feel about things. So eventually, once I actually got my pro card, SBD approached me. And oftentimes I tell people, so you'll have a lot of companies approach you. But oftentimes, if you have to look at the contract, because it might be too much work for you. I've had companies that, were willing to give me products, but I'd have to post like 8 times on social media. And I actually do not. So I'm sponsored by SBD, AccuMobility, and Play Again Now. And I actually do not have to post anything on social media. I choose to, because I actually believe in using the products in my everyday life. And that's one thing I really try and get out to people. Like, if you don't actually love the product and the brand, then I don't care how good the deal is, don't go with it, because you're selling yourself short. Eventually something will come along.
Yeah, it seems inauthentic at one point, and the reason why I feel people follow a certain athlete is because they relate to them, at least what the projection they put out is. So as soon as it just doesn't seem like that person, people seem to lose interest, and you're going to lose the same kind of reach and leverage that you had to get those sponsorships. And I always say that you should just be yourself and just be open, as much as you want to be.
Yeah.
If you're not an open person, obviously that's not going to work. You're going to have to figure that out. But, the worst thing you can do is, like, you look at, like, like someone like Conor McGregor who's just calling people out. And if you try to be that person, but that's not really who you are to some extent, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, exactly. Just be yourself. I mean, and you look at, everyone looks up to athletes, and it's like everyone has their own different style. Like in strongman, it's like, Eddie Hall, like, will call people out or flip them off. And, Brian Shaw would, he's more like quiet and humble, but it's just how someone is. They're not acting. That's just who they are. And, someone's personality, that's another thing I just bring to kind of a different subject, is like, don't take it personally how someone acts on contest day, because that just could be how they are. I'm actually a really social person. And I was kind of joking, now that I'm doing a different style of training, I prefer headphones. And I notice people are so social at the gym. And I'm really social too, but like, if I have my headphones on, like, I'm not going to talk to you. I don't care if you're waving at me or whatever. It's my time. And, as I get older, I have more respect for my time. So I just always tell people, like, don't, if someone's working out or they're at a contest, like, that's not who they are. They're getting ready,
Yeah, and I don't think you should. I see a lot of people, they'll mention, like, oh, I tried to meet someone at an expo or whatever, and they're an asshole. And I'm like, you can't judge someone based on, like, one interaction.
Yeah, you never know too. Like, especially at like an event like the Arnold, there's a million people around. You don't know if people get anxiety being around that type of people. Like, you don't know. So
yeah, you just don't know. Yeah, and I definitely had people that did not like me off of my antics competing, but I thought it was just fun. Like that's how I approached it. More so than just lifting. I thought it's like it's a platform to perform in a way. So you have fun, and I think, and then some people get it. It's just your sense of humor, but you got to be who you are. I could imagine just, Brian Shaw trying to act like Eddie Hall, and it would, I don't think it would work very well.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
But aside from sponsorships, just networking and and trying to coach and stuff. What's how, like, when you first started doing that, when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did it that way. I really should have done this.
As far as coaching?
Yeah, like how your approach was, what your thoughts going into it.
Oh, so when I first started coaching, I was so excited that it kind of wore me out as a person, because I would I think that there needs to be a fine line between like coach and trainee, because otherwise people will walk all over you. And I always try to keep in mind, it's like, my coach actually told me this too when I told him I was going to start coaching. He was like, don't take what you know for granted, because something that may seem like common sense to you isn't until, to everyone else. So I try to it's definitely taught me a lot of patience, but I also set up something recently, communication guidelines that I send to all my clients prior to onboarding them, because I think it's really important in order for me to be the best coach. Like, I need to have them doing their work too. So if I ask for an update, by X date, then make sure that you do it, because I'm going to put in the effort that you put into me.
Sure. Yeah, and you can't have, 20 different people messaging you all day like your best friend. It's great. I know. I wish you kind of wish you could. Like, I enjoy talking to people, but there's only so much time in a day.
Yeah, the best thing I actually ever did was put notifications off for everything.
100%.
Because otherwise, especially when you're a coach and, it's like if someone DMs you, it could be an inquiry, future business. But I just, I try to set rules for myself where I check it like at this time and this time every day. And then by this time I don't go on. Of course, sometimes, like anyone, I might be, in a meet, like waiting for something and check it. But I really, really try and be strict with that.
Yeah, I think that's important.
For my own sanity.
And you actually get more work done.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and going forward, so when let's go, flash forward to what would be the Arnold Amateur last year. You go in, just walk through that day, going through competing. I believe, you make day 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was March 2017. Yeah, that was March 2017. So a little over exactly a year ago. That's when I got my pro card. And I remember I got a ride to the airport, Boston Logan. My mom dropped me off, and I looked at her and I said, if I don't come back a pro, I was like, I'm taking a break, just because I put so much into it and I felt so prepared. But at the same time, I wasn't really nervous. It was more just like, all right, come on. Like, I know I'm as strong as the other girls, if not stronger than some of them that already have their pro card. So I was like, I'm doing this. So I went in with that mindset, and probably, my favorite memory of the contest was there was an event. It was the keg clean and press with 30-foot runs in between. So you started with the keg, ran 30 feet, clean and pressed it once, ran 30 feet, clean and pressed it once, and then you ran 30 feet. It was clean and pressed away. The whole event was 60 seconds, so obviously the max reps at the end won, and it was 165-pound keg. Now, I did not get one rep in training of that weight. I think 160 with like one horrible rep was what I had gotten. I had tried my technique like 10 different ways. Finally, something clicked 2 weeks before, and I won. I think I got 7 reps, and I somehow won that event, which is funny because I'm not a presser at all. And yeah, so that put me in a really good place, because then I knew the rest of the events were, solid events for me. As long as I executed, I'd make it. And then, on day 2, I ended up getting second, not first, because, I made a mistake. I tripped there was a moving medley on stage, and the mat, like I think it was 30 feet, and the mats were placed at the end, not the whole thing, and I tripped right over a mat and had to pick up my duck walk. So yeah, I went from being in first to second, which I got my pro card, so I didn't even care at that point. I was like, but I made a vow to never trip again, and I haven't done that since. So, knock on wood, it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and those are the kind of things you have to take into account, like that there's a mat at the end that you kind of have to pick up your feet a little bit more. Of course, easier said than done in the middle of a medley with a heavy implement. But yeah, I remember watching that on the live stream. I was like, oh crap! But like you said,
yeah.
I think that they give out pro cards for everyone that made the finals that year. Is how it worked.
They did. They announced it. Actually, they announced it at the rules meeting the night before. They actually announced that all 4 of us would, under as long as we went to Strongest Women in the World. Like, so they were basically,
sure.
They were actively trying to grow the pro class, but we had to do our part too.
Right. Yeah. Just like you
like
said.
You couldn't just get a pro card and then retire. We had to still compete.
Sure. Which I get it from both sides. It's hard to you want a pro class. A lot of people just want that title, then they just use it in whatever way, and they don't want to do the work afterwards, which doesn't really help the promoters, because then what's the point of it? But yeah, then you go through, then you go to Strongest Woman in the World, you perform well, you start to go in the pro ranks. What did you see the difference when you started to do the pro level shows? Obviously it's like some of the pretty much the same people you've been competing against previously, but did you notice any difference? Or
yeah, with the pro level, I mean, all around at this point, no one's really going to mess up as much as they would at the amateur level. So it was more just, this is actually when I took a different approach. I talked to my coach, and instead of doing 8, 10, 12-week preps, what I would do is, because so many times the events are so heavy for me, I would actually just kind of do like a 4 to 6 week prep, but mainly just working on static strength. Because at this point, me personally, my strengths are that I'm really, really fast and dynamic. And, my weakness is my static strength. I'm trying to get a 500-pound deadlift now, which, a couple of years ago, that would have been awesome. But at this, I think every other pro has pretty much pulled 500 except me. So that's one goal. I know I need to just get statically stronger.
Sure. Yeah. It's so ridiculous and awesome at the same time, that last statement you just made. But
I know it's awesome. Like, believe me, it's awesome. I love saying it because I'm like, so many girls have pulled 500. If you said that a couple of years ago, you'd be like, what?
Yeah. I remember competing.
Or even for something like something like the log. I finally hit 200 pounds 2 years ago. And that was, I think at the time the world record was from Alana Kesey. It was 210, I believe, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah,
and now,
right.
Christian Rose just hit 265. And I was joking. I told Lisa, I'm like, oh, you should hit 300 before you're 30. Because it's just we keep raising the standard, which in any sport, that's going to happen. It's supposed to. It's awesome to me.
Yeah, I definitely think a woman's going to hit 300. And
yeah, no doubt.
And Leifa's so young, and she's already hitting she did 245 or something at the Arnold, and gave a crack at 265.
Yeah,
she definitely has a lot of room for that.
It's gonna be. It's awesome, and I think I'm a middleweight, and I think it's pretty awesome that some of the strongest in the world are middleweights too.
Yeah, I really think that when they changed the weight class, because it used to be 165 and under, and I think you really saw it grow when they made it, obviously there's the subdivision of 160, but the main middleweight is 180, and it just seems like that's the right kind of weight for women, to have that frame and still be able to build enough muscle to be strong enough, someone who's 5'8", 5'9", etc.
Yeah, it's funny because we're all built pretty similar. We're all about between 5'6", 5'9". It's funny because, as I said earlier in our conversation, I used to weigh in under 160, and then my first Arnold, I remember purposely, I got to 170, and I was so excited. And now, no matter, I could never, it wouldn't be healthy for me ever to be below 160 ever. I just don't think that would ever happen.
You've been training hard for years now. You're gonna gain some muscle. You're pretty much not completely untrained, but by strongman standards, beforehand. So it's only natural that you're gonna, put some mass on.
Put some muscle on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd hope, or else.
Yeah, and it's pretty. Yeah, I would say the first year and a half of lifting is when I added the most muscle. Now I've pretty much been around the same weight. I again tried to gain a couple pounds for this past Arnold, and I'm back under 180 now, just a couple weeks later, because it's where I feel the best. But some of that, and I think that's another important concept to grasp, especially when women are just starting a sport. Like if you're really training and putting in the effort, you're gonna gain muscle. I mean, you should. I mean, you're doing movements like the yoke where you're holding up 500, 600 pounds on your back. Like your body needs to compensate for that. So, your traps, shoulders, your legs, they're going to grow because to support your body.
Yeah, your body adapts to its stresses. So, you're not gonna, it's going to be a little hard to just, some people do it, it looks like, and they're somehow like they're just their tissue strength or whatever is strong. But yeah, a little muscle mass helps for sure.
Definitely.
So going, you start to compete strongest woman in the world. You just got done. I think the two main contests to touch on are, World's Strongest Woman, which is kind of like the first official time they had it for a middleweight class. How was that? Like, how was it when you heard the news? You're like, hey, there's going to be an officially licensed World's Strongest Woman. It's going to be, somewhat close distance travel, and they actually have your weight division.
Yes. So when I heard the news, I was really confused because the first thing I asked myself, well, I'm doing strongest woman in the world in the Olympia. What's the difference between strongest woman and world's strongest woman?
Fair question.
So I was really, really confused. And then when I looked into it more, it was more like strongest woman in the world was for NAS, and then the world's strongest woman was once I started looking into it, I actually got more excited about it because I was like, wow, this is for everyone, even people that didn't compete, because usually there's a way to get to something. So even if they didn't compete, there was an online qualifier, which made it more of like, how with the CrossFit Open, anyone can go as long as they get a certain score or whatever at their gym.
Sure.
So I kind of looked at that as the bigger opportunity, like, wow, I'm going against like all of these women in middleweight, and there's an official title. So that was actually my biggest contest. I've never had, actually besides the Arnold, but I had 30 women, I believe it came down to, in my weight class. So that was awesome to have that level of competitors.
Yeah, I totally get why there's the confusion, and there is a lot of people in the sport, even just announcing the competitors for World's Strongest Man, and I see a lot of comments on the posts I've made like, well, why didn't this person qualify? They just won this Arnold, and they don't understand that these are completely different organizations, promoters, federations, and one doesn't equal to the other. And it's just how the sport is at the moment. It's not universally sanctioned, and it's probably for the best overall, I feel, because competition is always good, for athletes and for businesses. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, Arnold Pro, it's, you compete at the Arnold Amateur. Was there any major differences you felt? And also, well, I guess the bigger thing is you're going against just everyone. You're not in middleweight. There's, the top, open weight competitors. There's lightweight competitors. There's everyone. How was it? First, how did it differ compared to the amateur in your experience? And then how did you like or feel about having, competing literally with just, no weight classes?
Yeah, so it was definitely, the experience itself was a lot different. I felt, like now that I'm a pro and competing at that level, like I wouldn't ever want to go back to amateur because we got so much more recognition, which was awesome. Finally, to be able, we weren't on the main stage yet, but we were on the rogue stage. So that was pretty awesome just to have people like that really looked up to us, cheering for us. That was just an incredible feeling. And I actually really liked having the open weight class. I was a little nervous at first. I got to 185, just to kind of see if it helped me. I was kind of I have never really purposely gained weight. I was kind of just doing a trial run to see if it helped me. And honestly, it didn't really help me that much. I mean, it made my joints and stuff during training feel a little bit better, and I recovered faster, but overall, like, my quality of life kind of went down. I felt lethargic, not as energized, like I needed to drink 3 cups of coffee a day. So I don't think I'll ever be doing that again. Sure. It was only like 5-6 pounds. I definitely felt it. So I embraced going against having an open weight class, because with strongman, you never know what the events are going to be. So obviously having a max deadlift and a max log, personally, those are 2 events that aren't exactly my best. So that was challenging. But, on day 1, like, I feel like all weight classes kind of hung together, and I definitely, I don't think the weight class makes as much difference as people say it does.
Yeah, I don't think it does either, especially from middleweight to open. I think. Yeah,
for lightweight, like I had heard in your podcast before, I definitely do think for lightweight it does make a difference. Because if you're under 140, usually, I mean, the most you can possibly weigh is like 155, 160.
That's just a big.
And then
difference.
You have to get back to 140. So. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I said that, I don't mean to disparage any of the lightweights for competing. Like I said, if they invited me to do the Arnold Pro, I'd probably really consider it, even, especially if they're some of the more dynamic events that they're making. So some of the, there's some of the weight classes can have success in it, but it's just not how you're going to best showcase the athlete, in my opinion. But
yeah, absolutely. Because if companies are looking at that, they're just going to think, oh, whoever won, is the best. They're not going to really take into account like the different weight classes and stuff. Sure. So that's a good point. I see the pro and con in both of those.
Yeah, and there was some amazing performances, so they get their chance to shine as well. So I don't want to take away. I know you got to get going, but before we wrap up, I just got to talk about the female strength athlete, DMs and the whatever you call it, people. I don't even know what the right word to put it, but we just got to get an example of some of the ridiculousness. So the muscle worship or whatever it is. It's just weird, and I think it probably would scare a lot of women, so I think that's why it's important to talk about. Obviously, I don't encourage that type of behavior at all, and it's weird, but if you're putting yourself out there on social media and you're, muscular and lifting a lot of weights, it's probably going to happen. So what's some of your experience like when it first started happening? How did you react to it? Because I've gotten it myself, so...
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, no, I mean, there's 3. I mean, with the internet, there's like 3 buckets of people. There's the weirdos, there's the supportive people, and then there's the naysayers. So, with everything, like, all in a day, I'll get a message that says like, "Oh, you've inspired me to do this," and I'll get another message that says like, "Can you lift me?" And then I'll get another message that says like, "You look like a man. How many drugs do you take?" Like, etc. So
sure.
Kind of like 3 buckets, and I openly talk about it because I've had friends, clients, and just people that have gotten these messages and it's affected them.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, if you've never gotten a negative message and all of a sudden, like, you just started lifting and someone's calling you a man, like, everyone's going to interpret that differently. So I try to make jokes about it and, like, I'll talk about how it's not okay, but just, like, educating people that it's going to happen, because it is going to happen, especially, if you go on any YouTube video, there's going to be a million comments, whatever I don't know what the most trending video is of this week, but I'm sure you can find negative and positive comments on everything, and it's just kind of rolling with it. It gets annoying. I block people. Like, sometimes it's actually funny, like, and it makes me laugh, and it adds some relief, comical relief during the day. And other times, like, if it's really nasty, like, I just block it and, like, whatever. They don't affect my life whatsoever, so I don't care.
No, yeah, I think it's important that people should know that they are able to block someone. I had conversations where people are like, well, I don't want to lose my follower count or something. And then I'm like, that's ridiculous. You don't want just more people showing up to hang out in your house just because, and they're just disrespecting you the whole time. They don't get that right, is my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
And, I think it's just, yeah, just definitely part of it. Like, it's always the same people too, and usually they don't have real profiles, so that's kind of the funny part. It's like, it makes you wonder, like, who is behind this computer?
Yeah.
Is it someone I know? Or what is it?
Yeah, I just saw.
Hopefully not, right?
You'd hope so, because that gets a lot weirder. But yeah, I saw. Who was it that? Like someone said, like, why am I gonna respect someone's opinion of what they say about me if they don't even respect, like, they don't have like the balls or respect enough to even put up even a picture of someone else like on their profile if there's like nothing. And
Yeah, exactly. And I actually want to tell a story about that because it's
sure.
really funny. So my boyfriend Jake, he was a Marine, so I guess he just doesn't really give a shit. Like, he'll do whatever he needs to do. And I thought it was funny. Like, one day I got a message, and it actually wasn't from a fake profile. This guy had like 600 followers. He had pictures with his wife, who was beautiful, and he had 2 kids that were younger. And he kept commenting, like, you know, I don't want to say hurtful because I didn't care, you know, whatever. I can swap more than this dude, clearly. Comments. And then, you know, my boyfriend saw, and I did not approve of him doing this, but he came home from work that day and was like, guess what I did? I'm like, what? He's like, so-and-so that commented on your picture, he had in his profile, like, where he worked. He was like, I Googled where he worked and spoke to the female manager. And I was like, you did what? And I was like, why would you do that? And he was like, well, my reason is, he's like, if someone thinks it's okay to do that, they need to realize that maybe they shouldn't have a public profile and that there's repercussions for their actions. It turns out, like, his wife ended up messaging me, and like, I felt horrible. But it just goes to show you, like, if you do something on the internet, like, whether it's good or bad, like, you don't know what can happen. Like, it's out there. So I thought that was kind of a funny story. I was kind of mad that he did that, but, you know,
No,
I guess hopefully that guy learns a lesson, because he has kids. You never know. What if his daughter grows up and wants to be strong women?
Yeah, that's the thing that it weirds me out when I see someone just acting so hateful, and then you look and they're like pictures with their young daughter. I'm like, geez, man, like, you need to. I feel bad for them. I'm not
Sad,
mad at them.
yeah.
I honestly get sad, because it's
Yeah,
just
no,
like,
it is really sad.
is, you know, like, you should be fine. Like, you need to deal with whatever it is in your life, in your, you know, in your going on in your head. Because, you know, it's not healthy, and it's going to affect other people around you. But yeah, that made it less fun than more somber. But it's just a part of it. And the other thing I've noticed is, like, I'll have if I'm having a conversation with someone and they're saying something I totally disagree with, or they say something kind of disparaging, when you're looking at someone face to face and you can kind of get an idea of their tone, like, more of an idea of, like, their own background or ignorance, you know, and it's easier where I can just kind of let it go. Or it's like online, when you're reading, you're pretty much reading something in your own voice. So, and you know how you think.
Exactly.
So you're like, how does someone not get this? But it's just harder. So I guess I'm just reminding myself here. But yeah. So I know you have to go. Really appreciate you coming on. What's next?
So I'm doing it was just announced. I was actually going to try to take more time off. In my head, I didn't want to do another competition until the December Train Strongman show, but I am doing the Strongest Woman in the World because it's in Norway in the end of July. So, but I am really sticking to my guns, and I'm not. It's so hard for me. I'm not touching an event. I'm really sticking with barbell work because I need to pull 500 pounds, and I need to get, you know, my strict press to like 160 before I can before I allow myself to train events again. So.
Sure. Yeah, and
yep, that's pretty much that. July and December.
I think that'll be a really fun contest for you. It's more like old school strongman. Looking at the events, you got like truck pull, Hercules hold, a Viking press. I don't think there's even a deadlift. You know, Atlas Stone's power stairs, right?
There's no log and there's no deadlift. So I was like, wow, this is a really, really good contest for me. And I think that's something, you know, the last thing I'll bring up is like, I absolutely despise when I see someone looking at a contest and saying like, oh, that's not a good event for me, I'm not going to do it. It's like, well, then you're not a you're not a good athlete, because there's so many times I go into a contest and I'm like, yep, that's not a good event for me, but I'm just going to own it. So whatever.
Yeah, but on that flip side, you can look at a contest that's a high level and be like, okay, I think this is going to work out pretty well. Like, I know what I can do.
Yeah, like I was excited.
Yeah.
I committed to going actually before I even saw the event, because it was in Norway and
Sure.
I always wanted to go there. And I have like 8 weddings this summer, but that just happened to be a weekend I was off. So
Perfect.
I committed, and then the events came out and I'm like, well, perfect.
Awesome. Well, I look forward, and also, you're doing your online coaching, doing some seminars. What's the best way for people to contact you if they're interested in any of that, or just follow with your training?
I have an email in my Instagram bio. I also have a website, so either one of those, either email or just filling out a form on my website, is best. And I usually try and get back to people, within like 5 days.
Sure. And what's your website and everything?
It is bdimestraining.com, and my Instagram is b_dimes, DIMEZ.
Yeah, with a Z. Awesome. Really appreciate it. It was always good talking to you, and I'll let you get back to your busy schedule, and appreciate you coming on, and I'll be in touch.
Thanks so much, Kalle.